Have you ever wondered what really makes a person who they are beneath the surface? We all wear masks, play roles, and sometimes hide parts of ourselves from the world. But what if I told you there are just 3 simple signs that reveal a person's true character, no matter how well they try to hide it? In the next few minutes, we'll uncover these powerful truths so you can see people clearly and understand the real essence of who they are. You see, we often assume that words are the window into someone's soul, that what a person says reveals who they are. But that's an illusion. Language is clever. It's polished, practiced, even strategic. Words can be rehearsed, but behavior is raw. If you truly want to know someone's character, don't focus so much on what comes out of their mouth. Pay attention to what they do when they don't know anyone is watching. It's in those quiet, seemingly insignificant actions where the truth begins to unfold. Now listen closely, because this is where most people go wrong. They believe character reveals itself during big, dramatic moments. But in reality, it's revealed in the smallest details. You can't hear someone's soul in a speech or a social media post, but you can see it in how they speak to someone they believe has nothing to offer them. You can see it in how they respond when they're slighted, when plans change, when they're forced to wait. These aren't big moments, but they are true moments. To see someone clearly, you must become a quiet observer, not a judge, not a critic, just a watcher of patterns. When people think they're being evaluated, they perform. They put on their best behavior, a mask of kindness, of confidence, of control. But no one can wear a mask forever. And when it slips, because it always does, that's where the truth lives. Let me offer you a simple truth. Action is the language of character. A person may speak of patience yet lose their temper when things don't go their way. They may preach empathy yet dismiss the pain of others when it becomes inconvenient. That contradiction, that space between what they say and what they actually do, is where their real self is hiding. And your job, if you want to see clearly, is to stop being impressed by words and start noticing the behaviors that keep repeating. Why do we overlook this? Because we want to believe what people tell us, especially when their words sound good, when they tell us what we want to hear. But this belief can blind us, so we trust too quickly. We ignore the red flags. We excuse what we see, just because it doesn't match what we heard. But the truth is always right there, in the pattern, not the pitch. Let me tell you this. If you watch long enough, you'll learn everything you need to know. The way a person treats someone they don't need. The way they react when plans fall through. The way they behave when they're frustrated, ignored, or criticized. Those moments aren't accidents. They're the blueprint of their internal world. It doesn't matter if someone speaks like a saint, if they act like a tyrant under pressure. You must become less concerned with how people present themselves and more interested in what they reveal unintentionally. You must learn to see without being told. You must learn to listen without hearing words. This isn't about being cynical, it's about being awake. When you shift your attention from what people say to what they do, everything changes. You begin to see people not as they wish to be seen, but as they truly are. You begin to spot integrity in the quiet acts of honesty, in the way someone keeps a promise they could have easily broken. You begin to spot humility in the way someone listens more than they speak. You begin to spot strength in restraint, in kindness, in consistency. The world is full of noise, people shouting about who they are. But you don't need to listen to all that. Just watch. Just observe. That's where truth lives. Because real character doesn't perform. It doesn't self-promote. It reveals itself, effortlessly, in the choices made when no one is looking. So if you want to know who someone is, really is, don't ask them, just watch. There is a particular moment that never lies about a person's true nature. It's when they believe they have the upper hand. Give someone power, even just a little bit, and you'll see what kind of person they really are. It doesn't have to be a grand position or a public title. It can be something as small as being in control of a conversation, holding authority over someone else's schedule, or being asked to lead a group. Power doesn't corrupt, it reveals. And what it reveals is the structure of someone's character beneath the surface. Now, I want you to think about how people behave when they're under pressure or in conflict. Do they remain grounded? Do they stay composed and clear? Or do they lash out, blame others, and try to dominate the moment? Because how someone handles pressure tells you what kind of inner world they live in. It tells you whether they've built themselves from discipline or from impulse, from values or from ego. I've observed that power and conflict are two of life's most honest tests. Anyone can be kind when things are going their way. Anyone can speak with grace when they're being praised. But give them resistance, give them stress, and suddenly the truth begins to surface. The mask slips. You see whether their kindness was rooted in principle or performance, whether their calm was genuine or conditional. And this is where it becomes important for you, not just to observe others, but to observe yourself. Because you too are revealed by how you respond to challenge. When someone is granted authority, even briefly, what do they do with it? Do they become arrogant, dismissive, controlling? Or do they use it to serve, to lead with humility, to build others up? You can always tell who is mature by how they handle being in charge. The immature seek power to feel important. The mature seek power to create safety and structure for others. They don't need to prove anything. They already know who they are. And then there is conflict. Look closely at how someone responds to disagreement. Do they shut down? Do they explode? Do they manipulate? Or do they listen, reflect, and try to find truth, even if it means they must change? You see, real strength isn't about having control over others. It's about having control over yourself. It's about the ability to remain steady in discomfort, to seek resolution rather than revenge. When someone is angry, insulted, or threatened, their unconscious rises to the surface. That's where the deep parts of them live. The insecurities, the fears, the unresolved pain. And when those things are triggered, people show you exactly who they are. Not who they want you to believe they are, but who they've actually become. There's something else to notice here. It's how someone treats people when they have nothing to lose and everything to gain by acting selfishly. When they're in a position to help someone, without applause, without recognition, what do they choose? Do they offer their time, their patience, their attention, or do they use their power to step over the weak, to advance their own comfort? These choices may seem small, but they reveal the very foundation of character. Real integrity shows when no reward is expected. Real honor shows when the easy path is available but not taken. These are the moments that expose who a person is, not their words, not their intentions, but their reflexes under fire. And so I say this. Observe the person who is given control and pay attention to what they do with it. Watch how they speak when they are right and someone else is wrong. Watch how they act when they're angry, when they're inconvenienced, when they're forced to wait. These are not just reactions. They are expressions of the inner world, patterns shaped over years, habits born from belief. You cannot fake grace under pressure. You cannot pretend humility when you hold power. These things must be cultivated, and if someone has done that inner work, you'll see it, not in the spotlight, but in how they move through tension. So if you want to know someone's true character, don't just watch them in calm waters. Wait until the storm comes. That's when the truth appears. There is one place where a person's character is revealed more clearly than anywhere else. In the moments when no one is watching. No spotlight, no applause, no accountability. Just them, alone with their choices. You see, the true measure of a person isn't found in how they perform in front of others, but in what they choose when there's nothing to gain and no one to impress. That's where character either stands tall or disappears completely. People often ask, how do I know if someone is genuine? The answer is simple, but it's not always easy to accept. Watch what they do when they think no one will ever find out. What kind of decisions do they make when there's no reward attached? Do they keep their word even when it's inconvenient? Do they take shortcuts when no one is looking? Do they remain loyal in the silence or only when it's convenient for their image? These questions matter because they expose something deeper than personality. They reveal integrity. Most people are more concerned with reputation than character. Reputation is how others see you. Character is how you see yourself. It is the internal compass, the voice you answer to when the room is empty. If someone acts one way in public and another in private, that isn't duality. That's dishonesty. There is a misalignment between their outer self and their inner reality, and you can only fake that for so long before it begins to show. Now let me say this, not because it's easy to hear, but because it's true. The gap between who someone is when people are watching and who they are when they're alone is the exact distance between authenticity and illusion. The wider the gap, the more you are dealing with a performance. And a performance, no matter how convincing, is always temporary. That's why it's important to pay attention to the small things, the invisible moments. Does someone clean up after themselves when no one tells them to? Do they speak well of others when those people aren't around to hear it? Do they do the right thing quietly, or only when there's a stage? You might think these details are insignificant, but they aren't. They're sacred, because they point to the parts of a person that are not being controlled or managed for appearance. They point to the truth. Even in your own life, think about the decisions you've made when no one was watching. Were they made out of alignment with your values or your image? Were they driven by your conscience or your desire to avoid discomfort? These are difficult questions, but they are necessary ones. Because if we want to be people of depth, we must build ourselves from the inside out, not the outside in. And here's something else I've learned. Those who live with true character don't need recognition. They don't need to be thanked or praised for doing the right thing. They don't need an audience to live with intention, because for them, integrity is not a performance, it's a practice. It's not something they do when it's convenient, it's who they are, even when it costs them something. So if you want to understand someone's true nature, observe the decisions they make in solitude. Watch how they act when there's no spotlight. Watch how they treat the rules when they believe there are no consequences. And if you see consistency, if you see honesty and care even in those quiet, unnoticed corners of their life, then you've seen something rare. You've seen real character. And what you'll find is that the people who live with this kind of integrity also tend to be the most peaceful. Why? Because they aren't constantly performing. They don't carry the weight of maintaining a false image. Their private life and public life are the same. And that harmony, that alignment, is what gives them strength. They aren't fractured, they are whole. We live in a world that is loud with image and performance, but character? Character is silent. It's revealed in the choices made in the dark, the sacrifices made in secret, the values lived when no one is clapping. That's what makes it powerful. That's what makes it real. So if you want to know someone's true character, don't look at what they do when the world is watching, look at what they do when it isn't. So often, people tell you who they are. They use grand words, polished phrases, and well-rehearsed stories. They say, "I'm loyal," or "I always do the right thing." But I've never been interested in what people claim. I've always been more interested in what their lives reveal when no one is asking them to speak. You see, real character doesn't introduce itself. It just shows up, over and over. in the patterns we live by. It's easy to talk about values. It's easy to wear a mask of kindness or integrity for an afternoon. But you can't perform your way into being a good person. Not for long. Eventually, the truth shows itself, not in dramatic moments, but in the quiet repetition of how someone moves through the world. If you really want to understand someone, stop waiting for them to tell you who they are. Just watch them. Watch how they treat others, how they carry themselves when there's no reward, how they respond to the world when things are ordinary and unspectacular. That's where character lives. I've always believed that if you pay close attention, you'll notice that the most honest things about a person are rarely spoken. They're lived. They're repeated without thought. The same way a river carves its shape through years of flow, a person's true self carves patterns into their daily choices. How they respond to pressure, how they handle authority, how they behave when they're alone. These patterns are louder than any speech, more accurate than any self-description. We all want to be seen a certain way. That's natural. But there's a difference between wanting to be good and actually being good. And that difference shows up in what we do when no one is telling us how to behave. You don't need to memorize someone's resume to know their character. Just spend time with them. Watch how they treat people who can't offer them anything. Watch how they handle boredom or frustration or being told no. You'll learn everything you need to know, not because they said it, but because they couldn't hide it. The truth is, people are always showing you who they are. Most of the time, you just aren't listening the right way. You're listening to words when you should be watching behavior. You're waiting for a confession when the evidence is already right in front of you. We forget that real character is quiet. It's not in the declarations. It's in the choices made when no one is asking questions. It's in the tone they use when they're tired. It's in whether they return the cart at the grocery store. It's in the honesty of their no when yes would have been easier. That's why I've never trusted first impressions. Not because they're wrong, but because they're too clean, too polished. Real character takes time to see. It needs space to reveal itself. Because while anyone can impress you for a day, only consistency will tell you who someone truly is. And consistency is always a better storyteller than charisma. So instead of being swayed by promises or appearances, train yourself to notice patterns. How does this person speak when they're comfortable? How do they treat someone they don't need? Do their actions align with the image they present, or is there a disconnect? These are the questions that matter, not because we're trying to judge, but because we're trying to understand. And understanding requires truth. Not performance, not projection, but truth. And here's the beauty of this kind of observation. It doesn't require confrontation. You don't have to accuse anyone of being someone they're not. You simply step back, watch quietly, and let them show you. Given enough time, everyone reveals themselves. Some do it with grace, others with contradiction, but they always reveal themselves. And when they do, you'll be ready, not because you listened harder, but because you watched more carefully. Because you gave it time. Because you trusted patterns over promises. Because you understood that real character doesn't speak loudly. It moves quietly, consistently, in the background of everything a person does. So if you truly want to know who someone is, don't ask, just watch. One of the greatest illusions we fall for is the belief that one moment can define a person, that one impressive gesture, one emotional speech, or one public display of goodness is enough to reveal someone's true character. But character isn't built in moments, it's built in patterns. And when you begin to understand that, you stop being impressed so easily. You stop mistaking performance for principle. You stop confusing charm for depth. Because real character doesn't announce itself. It shows up again and again in the small, quiet repetitions of daily life. So many people are busy trying to be seen a certain way. They carefully manage their image, curate their presence, and learn the right things to say in the right moments. But the truth is, the more someone tries to control how they're perceived, the more likely they are to be hiding who they really are. That's why you must learn to look beneath the surface, not just at what someone says once, but at what they do consistently. Because the truth of a person is never in what they promise, it's in what they repeat. You can learn more about someone from their habits than from their words. Habits don't lie. You can't fake consistency. You can only sustain what you are. So when you meet someone who claims to be kind, don't look at how they behave when they're trying to impress you. Look at how they treat others when they think you're not paying attention. When someone says they're honest, don't believe it because they told you so. Believe it when you see them choose the truth, even when it costs them something. That's where you'll find the reality, not the performance. And this doesn't just apply to others, it applies to you. If you say you value loyalty, then show it when it's inconvenient. If you say you value growth, prove it when it's uncomfortable. If you say you stand for something, let your actions speak when no one is clapping. Because who you are is not what you say about yourself, it's what you repeatedly choose, especially when no one else is around to validate it. It's easy to be good once. It's easy to show up and perform kindness when the spotlight is on. But what about the 5th time, the 10th time, the 100th time? What about the moments that don't bring praise or recognition? What about the people you help who will never say thank you? That's where real character shows. That's where the performance fades and the truth remains. And it's important to understand this. No one is perfect. You're not looking for someone who never slips, never fails, never struggles. You're looking for alignment. You're looking for a person whose values and behavior walk side by side more often than not. You're looking for someone whose apologies are followed by change, not just words. Someone who shows up with the same integrity when it's easy and when it's hard. That's why you must stop relying on what someone tells you about themselves. Stop relying on first impressions or grand declarations. Instead, slow down, observe, let time reveal the truth. Time is the great filter. It reveals whether a person is acting out of principle or performance, whether they're motivated by who they are or how they want to be seen. And remember, those who live with true character won't need to convince you of anything. They won't constantly be trying to prove themselves. They won't be chasing approval. They'll just be living in alignment with what they believe. And that kind of quiet consistency is powerful. It builds trust, not through force, but through reliability. It builds respect, not through noise, but through integrity. The most trustworthy people you'll meet aren't always the loudest. They're not always the most charming or dramatic, but they're the ones who show up again and again with the same steady presence. They are the ones whose patterns speak louder than their promises. And when you find that kind of person, someone whose actions echo their words, hold on to them, because that kind of alignment is rare. So if you want to know who someone really is, stop watching for their best moment, start watching for their most repeated one. It's tempting to take what we've talked about, these signs, these behaviors, and use them as weapons. To begin dissecting everyone we meet, measuring them against a mental checklist, deciding who's real and who's fake, who's worthy and who isn't. But that's not the point of understanding character. The goal isn't to judge. The goal is to see more clearly, with greater wisdom, with deeper compassion, to recognize truth, not so we can condemn others, but so we can protect ourselves, build better connections, and grow into people of integrity ourselves. There's a difference between seeing clearly and seeing harshly. You don't have to become suspicious of everyone. You don't have to become guarded, closed off, or cold. In fact, once you learn to recognize the signs of real character, you can live with more openness, not less. You can walk into relationships more grounded, more aware, more prepared to love without being blind. Because love without discernment isn't love, it's projection. It's seeing only what we hope is true, rather than what is. You see, when you really begin to understand character, you stop looking for perfection in people. You start looking for alignment. You start asking, does this person live in a way that matches what they say they value? And when they don't, you don't have to explode. You don't have to shame them. You simply adjust your distance. You choose what kind of energy you want to let close to you. Not out of fear, but out. People are layered. They're messy. We all are. No one fits neatly into a box. Even those who struggle to act with integrity often have reasons, pain, trauma, fear, that shape the way they behave. That doesn't excuse their actions, but it helps us understand that judgment and clarity are not the same thing. Clarity is calm. It doesn't panic. It doesn't attack. It simply sees. And that's what you must cultivate, not just to understand others, but to grow in yourself. Because it's not enough to recognize these signs in someone else if we're not also willing to recognize them in ourselves. Every sign we've talked about, the way we treat those beneath us, the way we handle power, the way we behave when no one is watching, those aren't just windows into others, they're mirrors for us too. And if you're willing to look honestly, they can help you become someone of deeper substance, not just someone of strong opinions. Start with this. Ask yourself what kind of patterns you've built, not what kind of values you say you have, but how those values show up in your actions. Do your relationships reflect respect? Do your habits reflect discipline? Do your choices reflect what you claim matters to you? This is the quiet work of character. It doesn't get headlines, it's not loud or flashy, but it's the work that lasts. And maybe the most powerful part of this journey is realizing that you don't have to announce your character. You don't have to explain it, defend it, or convince anyone of it. You just have to live it. When your life aligns with your values, people feel it, even if they can't always articulate it. There's a quiet strength in that. A stability that doesn't need validation. A peace that doesn't require applause. So use what you've learned here, not to close your heart, but to open your eyes. Use it to surround yourself with people who show consistency, not just charm. And above all, use it to become someone whose integrity is felt without being advertised. Let your actions speak. Let your choices whisper what you stand for. Let your life become the message. Because in the end, it's not about how many people we impress, it's about how few people we mislead. If you found this insight valuable and want to uncover more truths about human nature and character, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a powerful lesson. Also, be sure to watch the next video where we dive deeper into how to build your own character and live a life of integrity. Your journey to true understanding starts now. Let's keep growing together.